My dad handed me a shovel and said, "Dig deeper if you want answers." What I found buried under the tool shed wasn't just old papers. It was proof. When I showed my MO, she didn't deny it. She just whispered, "Who else knows? Hey there. We're working hard to hit our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love true, emotional stories, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know." Now let's get into the story. My name's Jake. I'm 24, work as a diesel mechanic in Ohio, and until 3 months ago, I thought my family was just typical. Messy, loud, sometimes frustrating, but still mine. That changed the day my dad handed me a shovel. It was the last full sentence he ever said to me. He was in hospice by then. The cancer had eaten away at everything. His body, his energy, even his voice. I had flown home from Cincinnati to be with him during his last days. My mom was in the kitchen making soup he wouldn't eat, and I was sitting at the foot of his bed, pretending like we weren't both counting the minutes. That's when he looked at me, grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, and whispered, "Behind the shed. Dig deep if you want answers." He squeezed my hand once, then let go. He died 2 days later. We buried him on a Thursday. Closed casket. My mom barely spoke at the funeral. My younger cousin gave a short eulogy, mostly about fishing trips and Sunday breakfasts. No one mentioned what he said to me. I kept it to myself. It felt too strange to bring up, but it haunted me. 3 weeks after the funeral, I went back. I waited until my mom had gone to the store, then walked behind the old tool shed. The one my dad used to sit behind when he needed a break from everyone. It smelled like dust and oil, same as it always had. I grabbed the shovel leaning against the fence and started digging. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I thought maybe it was metaphorical. Some poetic last words. But no. 6 feet in, something scraped against metal. It was a rusted lockbox. Medium-sized. Nothing dramatic. Just steel and silence. I hauled it out of the dirt, cracked it open. Inside were documents, sealed in plastic sleeves, neatly arranged like someone knew they might be found after years underground. There was an envelope with my name on it, but I didn't open it first. The top folder had my birth certificate. At first, nothing seemed odd. Then I looked closer. Under father's name, someone had typed Robert Lewis, but it had been whited out. Underneath, faint and faded, was another name, Stephen Langford. Langford. I'd never heard that name in my life. Next was a DNA test. An old one. From a lab in Columbus. The names matched. My mom, me, and Stephen Langford. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. My head started spinning. I flipped through the rest. Letters, receipts, hospital discharge papers. There were court documents too. Stephen Langford versus Margaret Lewis. Sealed custody dispute. Dismissed. No record of it in our family story. And then I saw the envelope again. My name, Jake, written in my dad's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single note, barely a paragraph. He wrote, "You were the best part of my life. I knew the truth long ago. I chose you anyway. I buried this so when the time came, you'd understand what kind of man I really was. And what kind of woman your mother became." I must have stood there for 10 minutes, just breathing. Then I went inside. My mom was unloading groceries, humming to herself like it was just another day. I held the papers in front of me. No words, no build-up. She looked at them, looked at me, and said calmly, "Who else knows?" Not "what is that?" Not "let me explain." Not even denial. Just that one cold, calculated line. Who else knows? My stomach dropped. I said, "No one. Just me." She nodded once. No panic. No tears. Just nodded, and said, "Then it's still salvageable." I asked, "What's salvageable?" She didn't answer. She just walked into the living room, sat down, and turned on the TV. Like it never happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her face in my head. That line. Her expression. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't scared. She was ready. Like she'd always known this day might come. The next morning, she made pancakes. Didn't bring it up once. Didn't ask what I planned to do. Didn't explain a single detail. Just asked if I wanted syrup. I didn't eat. I told her I had to go back to the city. She just said, "Okay, drive safe." I left the documents locked in my truck and didn't speak to her again for 3 days. And then I got a letter. No stamp. No postmark. Just dropped into my mailbox at my apartment. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in large font. Sometimes digging up the past only makes it easier to bury the future. No name. No return address. But I knew who sent it. I just didn't know what she meant by bury the future. I didn't sleep much after that letter. I just kept hearing her voice. Who else knows? And now this line about burying the future. It didn't feel like a metaphor anymore. It felt like a threat. Quiet, but deliberate. So I went back to the documents. I spread everything out on my kitchen table, scanned every page, every date. I'd missed a few things in the shock, like the address printed on one of the old letters from Stephen Langford. It was dated 15 years ago, postmarked in Akron. A letter to my mom. You can't keep ignoring me, Margaret. I have rights. You told me you were going to tell him. I've stayed quiet for long enough. He's my son too. There were 5 more just like that. Year after year, the handwriting slowly getting shakier. One even said, "Tell him I love him. If you won't let me meet him, at least tell him that." Not once had my mom said his name to me. She always told me my dad, Robert, was my one and only. I looked like him, she used to say, acted like him, that he loved me more than anything. Now I wasn't sure what was real and what was rehearsed. The next day, I called a friend of mine who works in records for a county clerk's office. We used to play football together. I asked him, hypothetically, how someone might find information about someone if they only had a name and a couple of cities. He said, hypothetically, you'll need more than that. Then I gave him Stephen Langford's name and the last known address. He said he'd call me back. 2 hours later, he texted me. He's not dead. Changed his name in 2012. Court sealed the file, but he's in Cleveland now, working under a new last name. Want me to find it? I sat there staring at that text. My mom had told me he was dead, told me there was nothing to dig up. So why lie? Why tell me he was gone when he wasn't? I told my friend yes. Give me the name, the address, whatever he could. Meanwhile, I called my mom, just to hear her voice. I didn't plan to confront her, not yet. She answered like nothing had changed. Hi honey, you get home safe? I didn't know what I expected. Guilt? Hesitation? Instead, she asked if I'd had time to clean out Dad's closet, because she wanted to donate his coats. She wanted me to come back and sort through the rest of his junk, she said. Junk. I ended the call quickly. That night, I got another message from my friend. Found him. Goes by Stephen Larison now. Lives in Parma. Want the full file? I said no. I already knew what I had to do. So I got in my truck and drove. It was a weird drive. Quiet. I didn't listen to music. Didn't stop for snacks. Just kept wondering what I'd say if he answered the door. Would he even know who I was? What if he slammed the door in my face? What if he didn't? The neighborhood was older. Small brick homes, cracked sidewalks. His house had a rusted mailbox and a basketball hoop with no net. I walked up the driveway, hands sweating, heart in my throat. I knocked once. The man who opened the door looked like me. Not a copy, but familiar. Something in the jawline, the hairline, the way his eyes scanned my face like he was seeing a ghost. Jake, he said. Not even a question, just recognition. And then he started crying. Real, sudden, chest-heaving sobs. He invited me in without another word. The house smelled like old wood and takeout. There were stacks of books, a dog sleeping on the couch, and a photo of a younger me, taped inside a dusty frame. I thought I'd never see you, he said, his voice cracked. I didn't say anything. I just pointed to the photo. Where did you get that? He nodded toward a box under the coffee table. She sent me pictures. Every few years. No return address. Just photos. I was frozen. My mom. He nodded. Margaret. She said she'd never tell you. But she said I could have updates if I never reached out again. I asked him, why didn't you fight harder? He sat down, eyes rimmed red. I did. I tried. You don't know what it cost me. But your grandfather, her father, he made it very clear. I either walked away or something bad would happen. Now that was new. My mom's father died when I was 8. All I remembered about him was a faded photo and the smell of cigar smoke. I didn't know he was capable of threats. Stephen saw the confusion in my face. He said he'd have me arrested. Said he had connections. I didn't have money, Jake. Your mom's family did. And they weren't afraid to play dirty. I didn't even know where to start. We talked for 2 hours. About the letters. The photo. The man who raised me. And the man who was shut out before he got the chance. Stephen asked if I hated him. I didn't. But I did have one question. Why didn't you ever tell me any of this before? He looked at me with the saddest smile I've ever seen. Because I was waiting for you to dig it up on your own. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. That night, he gave me a folder of his own. Old letters. Printouts of emails. One page stood out, a photo from what looked like a barbecue. Backyard. Lawn chairs. My mother, maybe 20 years younger. And in the corner? Me. 5 years old, holding a juice box. Standing beside a man I didn't recognize. The photo was taken from behind a screen door. I asked, did you take this? He shook his head. No. It was mailed to me. With no note. Just the photo. So someone else had been watching. Someone wanted him to see me. And whoever it was, knew how to stay hidden. I drove home in a daze. The photo haunted me. Not just because I was in it, but because someone had taken it. Someone who'd been close enough to see me through the screen door. Close enough to be at that barbecue. It wasn't a paparazzi shot or a zoom lens. It was personal. That meant someone had been there, on the property, and never said a word. Stephen said he thought the photo was from around '04. That would have made me 4 or 5. And if that's true, then that backyard wasn't his. It was ours. I took a picture of the photo and sent it to my cousin, Daniel. He's 6 years older than me, and he used to come to every family cookout until he moved out of state. I texted, "Hey, do you remember this backyard?" He called me almost immediately. "Dude, that's your mom's house. That's your 5th birthday." I remember because the cake melted in the sun. I asked if he remembered anyone taking pictures through the door. He paused. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Yeah, I always thought it was weird your uncle kept taking pictures, but he said it was for a scrapbook." I hadn't even thought to look into my mom's brother, Uncle Dean. He was the only sibling she had. Quiet guy, never married. Used to come by with mystery meat chili every Christmas and leave before dessert. I hadn't talked to him in at least 2 years. But suddenly, I had a feeling he knew way more than he let on. I didn't go to my mom. I didn't tell Stephen. I went straight to Dean's house. He looked surprised to see me, but not uncomfortable. He invited me in, offered me beer, asked about work. I didn't bother with small talk. I took the photo from my pocket and slid it across the table. "You took this?" He stared at it, took a long sip of his drink, then nodded. I did. No denial. No excuses. I asked him why. He didn't speak right away, just looked toward the hallway like he expected someone to interrupt us. "Your mom told me to." That stopped me. "She asked you to take photos of her hiding me from my real dad." Dean let out a tired laugh. "No, Jake. She didn't ask me to hide anything. She asked me to monitor the situation. Your dad, Robert, was starting to ask questions. She wanted to make sure there was no chance Stephen would come around." I felt sick. "So you just played along? You spied on our family to protect her lies?" He didn't flinch. "I did what I was told. Your grandfather made it very clear that anyone who interfered would regret it." There he was again. My grandfather. The man I barely remembered. The man Stephen said threatened him. I asked Dean what that meant. Regretted how? He didn't answer, but his eyes said enough. Then, almost casually, Dean added, "You're not the first to go digging." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "When you were a baby, Stephen tried to fight for custody. Hired a lawyer. Showed up at the courthouse twice. Then suddenly, he dropped everything. Moved away. Stopped calling." I already knew that part. What I didn't know was what Dean said next. A week after that, his sister's car exploded. My mouth went dry. She lived? Barely. But she never spoke to Stephen again. Said he brought trouble to the family. That was the end of it. Dean stared at the photo again and tapped it twice. "You think your mom lied to protect herself. But you're wrong. She lied to protect you. If Stephen had kept pushing, he wouldn't be around today." I left without saying another word. I got in my truck and sat there for 20 minutes trying to piece together what the hell kind of family I'd been born into. By the time I drove home, it was dark out. My apartment lights were off, but my door was unlocked. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved. Except one thing. The metal box I dug up behind the shed. It was sitting on my bed. Open. And empty. Every document. Every photo. Every letter gone. All that was left was a single sheet of paper. Typed. No signature. Just a sentence. "You were warned." I just stared at the note. You were warned. Not stop digging. Not leave it alone. Warned. Like I'd stumbled into something that wasn't just about paternity anymore. This wasn't a story about a hidden father. It was about control, power, and how far some people will go to keep a secret buried. I spent the next day checking every closet, cabinet, drawer. I wasn't paranoid. I was certain someone had been in my apartment. The lock wasn't broken. No signs of forced entry, which meant someone had a key, and that someone had to be family. That same afternoon, my mom called. Her voice was casual again, too casual. "Hey, sweetie, just wondering if you could come by next weekend. Dean wants to have dinner. Said he hasn't seen you in forever." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the phone in silence until she said something that snapped me out of it. "It'll just be family. No outsiders. No outsiders." That's when I realized. She already knew I'd spoken to Stephen, and she was circling the wagons. I told her I'd come, and then I made 2 stops. A local electronics shop for a mini recorder. A lawyer friend of mine I met through a customer at the shop. I didn't need legal advice, not yet, but I did want someone to know what was happening. Someone outside the family, just in case. That Saturday, I drove back to the house I grew up in. Every brick felt colder than I remembered. The shutters were freshly painted, like someone wanted everything to look perfect again. Dinner was just like old times. Roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes with that weird gravy from a jar. Dean was already there. So was my mom. They talked about the weather, traffic, even the Browns. Then, midway through dessert, my mom set her fork down. "We should talk." Dean kept eating like he'd rehearsed this a dozen times. I pulled the recorder from my jacket pocket and set it on the table. Neither of them reacted, like they were expecting it. "Why now?" she asked. "Why dig this up after all these years?" I didn't answer her question. I asked one of my own. "Why did Dad go along with it?" She looked me dead in the eye. "Because I told him the truth." And he made a choice. I asked, what choice? To be your father. Not because of blood, but because you needed one. Because I needed someone to help raise you. Because Stephen wasn't stable. That caught me off guard. Unstable how? Dean answered this time. He drank. He gambled. He owed money to bad people. I shook my head. That's not what he told me. My mom smiled a little. The kind of smile you use when someone's too young to understand. Of course that's not what he told you. He wants to be the hero. That's what people do when they've been erased. They try to rewrite the story. I leaned forward. So which story is real? She took a long breath, then said something I didn't expect. They both are. She stood up and walked to the kitchen. Came back holding a dusty old box. Set it on the table in front of me. Inside, more documents. Court records. Medical bills. Police reports. Turns out Stephen did get arrested twice. Once for a bar fight. Once for driving under the influence. Both were sealed, minor charges, long ago. But then, there was something else. A restraining order. Filed by my mother. He showed up drunk. Banged on the windows. Scared you so badly you hid under the bed, she said quietly. I couldn't remember any of that. But I couldn't prove it didn't happen either. So we made a deal, she said. Stephen would walk away. Your father would raise you. And no one would ever have to know. I asked her, and Grandpa? What part did he play? She hesitated, then nodded toward Dean. Tell him. Dean cleared his throat. He paid Stephen. A lot. To disappear. And when Stephen's sister started stirring things up, well, he made that go away too. That was the first time they both acknowledged the explosion. You're saying he threatened her? I asked. My mom's voice dropped. No, I'm saying he made it happen. My hands were shaking. And you're okay with that? She looked at me like I was the crazy one. We protected you. You grew up safe. Loved. You had a father who adored you. And now you're throwing it all away for what? A different last name? I stood up. I couldn't stay there another second. I don't care about the name, I said. I care that you all built this lie and expected me to thank you for it. As I walked out, she said one more thing. You think this ends with the truth. But the truth is where it starts. If you keep going, you'd better be ready to finish what you find. I drove back to Cleveland with my head spinning. And when I got home, there was a new envelope waiting on my doorstep. Inside, no words, no photo, just a copy of my social security card and my birth certificate, but this time, both with the name Jake Langford. Someone was rewriting my identity for me, and they wanted me to know it. I stared at the forged documents for a long time. My social security card, my birth certificate, same birth date, same hospital, but a new last name, Langford, typed in like it had always been there. It was pristine, laminated, official looking. There was no return address, no message inside, just the paperwork, neatly packaged in a manila envelope, placed with surgical precision right in the middle of my doormat. It was a message, and it was clear. We're in control of the story. Even your name isn't yours anymore. That night, I scanned the documents, then burned the originals. I didn't know if they were real, didn't care, but I knew this. Someone had access to my personal information, someone close. And they weren't just watching. They were playing. The next morning, I called Stephen. He didn't pick up. I tried again. Voicemail. I texted him, told him everything. The photo, the documents, the threats, that I had visited my mom, that she admitted the payoff, that she knew what happened to his sister. An hour passed. No response. Then came the knock at my door. I looked through the peephole. No one. Just a package. Inside was an old VHS tape. There was a post-it stuck to the side with 3 words. Play. Then decide. I don't even own a VCR. Who does anymore? So I drove to a pawn shop on the edge of town. Bought the only working VHS player in the store for $40. Took it home. Hooked it up. The footage was grainy. 90s-style home video. Faint timestamp in the corner. 2002. The camera was shaky, pointed at a front yard. Kids playing with balloons. Birthday hats. Cake on a folding table. My mom in a red sweater. Laughing. Then it zoomed in. To me. 4 years old. Sitting on my dad's shoulders. Pointing at something off camera. Then came the voice behind the camera. Happy birthday, Jake. It was Stephen's voice. The camera panned slightly, and there he was, half reflected in a window, recording from the street. My dad looked directly at the camera and smiled. Cut that out, Steve. He's not yours. And then he walked back inside. The footage stopped. I sat in silence for a full minute. Not because of the video, but because of what that smile meant. My dad knew Stephen had been filming. Knew he was there. Didn't stop him. Didn't even seem mad. He invited it. Almost like they had a deal. A condition. I rewound the tape. Played it again. Slower. And I noticed something else. My mom, when she turned to look at the camera, her face changed. Not surprised. Not angry. Terrified. Like someone had broken a contract. And now there'd be consequences. That night, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. The voice on the other end wasn't Steven. Wasn't my mom. Wasn't Dean. It was a woman. Sharp, calm, older. You've been busy. I said nothing. Digging. Asking. Stirring up ghosts that were supposed to stay in the ground. I asked who she was. She didn't answer. Just said, "You think this is a family matter. But you're not the first to find the box." My skin went cold. There was another. 10 years ago. Different state. Same story. She continued, like she was reading from a file. Boy finds old documents. Learns his father isn't who he thought. Starts asking questions. Talking to people. Then, 2 weeks later. She paused. They found him in the river. With no ID. But his fingerprints told the rest. I didn't know what to say. So she said one last thing. "You have one more chance to walk away. You got your answers. Let the rest stay buried." Then the line went dead. After the call, I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I just watched that VHS on a loop, read the files Steven gave me again and again, and tried to decide, walk away, like the voice said, or push forward, and find out what the hell kind of story I'd really been born into. Then something happened that made the choice for me. Steven finally called. But he wasn't calm. He was panicked. "Jake, you have to listen to me. Someone broke into my place." My stomach dropped. They didn't take anything. They just left something on my kitchen counter. A picture of you. From yesterday. He sent me the photo. It was me, getting out of my truck, in front of my apartment. That was the line for me. Whoever these people were, whatever this family network had grown into, they weren't just covering up a dirty secret anymore. They were tracking us. That night, I opened a new Reddit account, made a burner Gmail, rented a P.O. box under a fake name. Then I wrote everything. All of it. The box under the shed. The DNA results. The video. The forged documents. The hospital records. The sealed court case. The threats. The calls. Even the woman's voice on the phone. I posted it to every thread I could find. r/conspiracy, r/legal advice, r/family drama, r/no sleep, just to cast a wider net. I uploaded redacted versions of every document. Made a timeline. I even posted the audio recording from the dinner with my mom and uncle. No edits. No spin. Just the truth. And then I walked away from my laptop. I expected silence. But by the next morning, it was everywhere. People dug into names. Dates. Properties. One Redditor found archived legal dockets showing my grandfather's company had been linked to private investigations firms and discrete asset recovery. Another linked a past PI to a suspicious fire from 1997 in a completely different city. Same kind of story. Same kind of cover-up. The comments exploded. People were obsessed. Others called it fake. But someone else read it too. Because 2 days later, I got another envelope. Inside, a single letter. Handwritten. Not typed. No threats. Just a letter. From my father, Robert. My dad. It was dated 3 weeks before he passed. It read, "If you're reading this, it means you found the box. I'm sorry for what I kept from you. But I loved you. I was never going to tell you, because I didn't want you to feel like a transaction. But you weren't. You were my son. Every part of you. I buried those papers not to hide the truth, but to delay it. Until you were strong enough to handle it. If she ever says, who else knows? You'll know it's still not over." There was a final line. I remember it word for word. They don't stop watching when the lie ends. They stop when the story spreads. I didn't freak out. I just felt something settle. Like a final door closing. I forwarded the post to my mom's email. No subject. No message. Just a link to the thread. She never responded. But someone else did. An anonymous comment showed up that night, under a throwaway Reddit account. Clever boy. But be careful who reads the comments. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.